Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our first edition of the Local Governance Seminar Series for this academic year. And I know we have people watching online as well. And for those of you who don't know, although most of you probably know this, we run this series usually about 4 to 6 times a year. And sometimes we have academics talking about new research. Sometimes we have practitioners talking about their insights from their work. And that's the case today. So I'm really glad to have with us today Ann Doyle. Ann has a more than 30-year career in various leadership positions in municipal government and land use planning and building and bylaw enforcement and administration. She retired as the City of Windsor's Executive Director of Building and Chief Building Official in 2014. And these days she spends much of her time providing workshops and speaking at conferences, and also writing on mentoring leadership and change management, especially with a gender perspective. Right? Leanne has a Bachelor in Environmental Studies from the University of Waterloo and a Bachelor of Education from the University of Windsor. And as some of you probably know, she's also a graduate of our MPA program, which she finished, what was it, 10 years ago or more than that? Now?
More than 10.
More than 10 years ago now. She's also a member of the Canadian Institute of Planning, the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, and the AMCTO. She received the Ontario Professional Planners Institute Award in 2006 for her leadership contributions to the Institute and the planning profession. And she's also a 1999 recipient of the Athena International Leadership Award from the Windsor Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. And she's going to be talking to us about the subject of leadership today. So please go ahead, Leanne. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's certainly a pleasure for me to be here today. First of all, coming back to Western, to the campus, and for those of you that are watching today, it's a beautiful day. The leaves are just starting to turn here on the campus. It's looking lovely. We have several students here that are with us this morning and will be this afternoon as well. So it's just really important for me at this stage to get back to the profession, to my profession, and to really get back to the community. So it's today really a focus on the toolbox for leadership of municipal administrators. It's really about what you can take away with you today from lessons learned. And I want to be able to share with you some insights into some of those lessons, a little bit of storytelling as well that will go with that as we proceed. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end, and I want to be able to, make sure that you understand that we're going to just kind of go through a quick overview. When we go into this session, we're talking about a little bit of background about leadership, some of the challenges and the opportunities, and looking at different types of leadership tools that, again, you can take away with you. And as I said at the end, there will be opportunities for questions. So one of the items that I first wanted to bring to your attention is that for many years now, we've anticipated a real, tsunami kind of wave that's cresting out there in terms of the need to find leaders in the municipal, provincial, and federal sectors, as well as any other sort of entity. Because what's happening in the workplace right now, if you'll see these stats, this I took from the Municipal Monitor, AMCTO, they have indicated just recently that 28% of their members are 55 years of age or older. And within the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, 30% of members are eligible to retire in the next 2 to 5 years. Now, within OMERS, which is the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System, there are 67,000 members that are eligible to retire today, with an additional 51,000 members that will be eligible to retire within the next 5 years. So my first message to the students that are currently in the MPA program, part-time, full-time, your timing is perfect. This is going to be a great time for you. Lots of opportunities. Timing is everything. This is so different. When I graduated, it was the complete opposite. There was nothing, very little in the way of opportunities. And really want to reinforce that point that particularly for municipalities where we have people that are viewing, that are working in their workplace, come up, make sure you have a succession plan in place, and make sure that you are finding out from your staff what kind of expectations they have for leadership. What is their 5-year plan? Make sure that their performance reviews are being updated and that there are development plans for your staff, because you need to, if you can, and find it in kind, if you can, if there are opportunities within your organization to promote from within. There are lots of opportunities for people outside the organization to come within. So do focus on the importance of this. This is extremely timely, this topic right now, because there is going to be a great need for leaders within all the municipal, provincial, federal organizations. Now, I'd like for you just to reflect, just take a second and think of somebody that you have interacted with in the workplace, within an organization that you've been involved with, someone in the community, someone that out there in the world that you view as a top-notch leader, somebody who really has given you great incentive, that if you could copy their style and replicate that leader, who would that be? And why? What particular leadership style do they have that makes them stand out, that makes them seem different than others that you've interacted with? Now, I'd like for you to see yourself as you move forward in your careers, as you look at yourself, and you will be able to see yourself fitting into a lens that will lead you to thinking of yourself as someone that you can put in that spotlight as well. So when we talk about leadership, and we have to be cognizant that there are going to be many challenges to anyone that assumes leadership. And one of those challenges, first of all, is that we are dealing with the political environment. Currently, right now, we know that we're halfway through the municipal tenure is a 4-year term for municipal politicians, so we're halfway there. And sometimes, you will see the first transition of timing, how that can affect political environment. As it gets closer to an election, you can sometimes, again, see that when you get into just having an election, there can be challenges because you need to understand what is driving those politicians. How do they think? What's their focus? How are they getting along? How are they interacting with each other? These can all, again, understand what their goals are, what their goals and ambitions are. So as leaders, you really have to be having, for that sort of transparency and understanding the expectation that the politicians have. That is extremely important because no one wants to be set up for failure. We understand that, we get that. So we have to be very clear as to what the politicians' expectations are, not only of the community, but of the staff, of the CEO, of, basically everyone that's involved in the organization. What is the expectation? So sometimes those expectations are not always realistic. Sometimes there are difficulties meeting those challenges. So we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to be able to clearly educate where we know in advance that there are going to be issues or challenges with that. The next challenge, and again, this is something that often happens in any public service, is it's different than private business. Our customers are the public, and we have many stakeholders. But at the end of the day, the expectations of our taxpayers and of the public, the stakeholders, the groups that we interact with, are varied and diverse. And again, it's having that awareness of what those expectations are as a leader, and understanding and educating too, because we can't always meet those expectations due to resource capacity, financial, the budgets that are given to us to be able to make certain things happen. We may not have those resources again, so we have to be able to look and seek out what those opportunities are to meet those expectations, and at least to be able to educate on providing realistic expectations. Now, another challenge often is legislative controls. We know that at the municipal, provincial, and federal level, we're always interacting with a number of varying agencies, varying ministries, and it's very important that you get a read on what those legislative controls are, because doing your job as a leader, you're responsible for making sure that the legislation is upheld, and you're also responsible to ensure that there's transparency and accountability to those legislative controls. So everything in my profession, it dealt with many aspects of legislative control. So part of my job was to educate the politicians and the public as well, and our customers on what those legislative controls are. For example, getting a building permit, what is required to get a permit, and when we have to issue stop work orders, and all those types of things that on a day-to-day basis, you have to be aware of. So the next item is looking at the organizational bureaucracy. And I say this only in the sense that when I was earlier in my career, and going back to back in the 90s, when there was a lot of municipal restructuring going on throughout the province, and I can vividly recall any number of times when both politicians and customers were frustrated with the fact that it took them, there were delays in getting service or getting whatever sort of action that they needed. So there was this real effort to try and streamline organizations to make them more customer friendly, and these are the kind of things again that continue. I mean, it's just we're all doing more with less in many organizations. So having awareness of that, they don't disappear, but you can mitigate them, and that's part of what a leader does. And we'll go through some of those in a few minutes. One of the time management is always a focus of many leaders, how to maximize the value of what they have to do in the short time they have to do it, with so many distractions that we've already talked about, and they keep happening. I'll use the example, for example, just recently the flooding in Windsor and Tecumseh. I mean, there's something that's unexpected. There's other needs and responsibilities and obligations that leaders have, that the politicians have, but they have, they put that aside and they focus on what's a priority, and that is dealing with the flooded basements, flooded streets, and all the ramifications of that. So that goes on not just one day, that goes on for days and weeks and months. So again, time management with the unexpected and with the expected, it's always prioritizing where those goals and needs are. And again, it always comes back to health and safety of the community, and that's very much a driver for any number of initiatives. Communication for leaders as well has been more challenging. I say that because when I started my career 35 years ago, we didn't have computers, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Facebook and all, Twitter and all the other sort of social media that we have today. And what happens, and I see happening, and I've seen through my career, is that there was less and less FaceTime between people and communication. And I can see that has been having some impact too on leadership in organizations. And so we'll get into more discussion about that. But the other thing is just getting information out there and getting the message out there. And sometimes the timeliness of getting the message out there it's really incumbent upon. You don't have control what goes into the newspaper or in the radio or on TV, what have you, but social media. So again, that's a different caveat that leaders deal with. And there are many other types of challenges that are out there, depending on the size of the community, of the organization, the resource capacity that the municipality has, or in the case of the province or the federal government. One thing I will add there that I've noticed in the last decade is a lot more litigation than there has been in the last 3 decades. That I would suggest that you see a lot more of that happening. So with municipalities and as well as other public organizations. So you could probably think of some other, as you're watching, you've come across, other challenges. These are just, again, sort of the caveat of some of the major ones and that you'll come or have experienced. So with challenge, there's opportunities. So you're always looking at the glass half full and not half empty. And that's very important as a leader, is being positive. It's really about looking at the change is good. Change brings opportunities. So you have to basically trust your instincts on that and look at what you can do to influence others. It's really about educating others. It's really about looking at what people need to understand and what's driving things. So what's the underlying rationale? Because again, it goes back to transparency at the end of the day. It's understanding, and there's not always, in my view, interaction that I had. Say, for example, when I was a planner and manager, doing different planning initiatives, and one was one particular time it was coming up with an official plan that had to be updated, hadn't been for over a decade. So you have to educate and understand the community's needs, but also what the political needs were, and balancing and trying to come up with the best plan. So there's very aspects of that. When you have a clear vision, you know where you're going. I use the example of sailing. You have a captain, you have a crew. The captain sets the course and has the crew to keep them assisting with what needs to be done to keep them on that course. So whether it's tacking or changing the direction of the sailboat, but it's you're heading on a direction. You have to get there together. You have to work together as a team. And so communication is extremely important. And I say that on the part of the politicians as with the staff, management as well, as everyone on your team. And so too often I have come across situations where the vision doesn't get clearly communicated to people on the ground, your troops to speak, the people that are making it happen. So it's really important to make sure that time is taken to clearly articulate what that vision is, so everyone is on the same page and reminded of that on a regular basis. I mean, oftentimes I would see mission statements put out. We would do strategic plans. We do, and we had to make sure that we did extensive consultation, that we did get input from politicians as well as staff at all various levels, and remind them of what those are. Just out of sight, out of mind. Memories are good, but they're short. So it's good to, again, refresh as you go along. Leaders walk the talk and lead by example. And this is important, not only in their professional lives, but also in one's personal life. The expectation is you work in the community. You don't always live in the community you work, but people know who you are. They see you in media. They hear you on the radio. They read about you in the newspaper. They come in. They have meetings with you. And so you understand that, we have an obligation not to the community in many ways, not just professionally, but as people living in the community. So have an awareness of that. I always use that kind of the grocery store story where I would go grocery shopping, and it would take probably most people maybe 10, 15 minutes to get out of the store. But when somebody recognizes you because they see you on the council meetings, or they see your picture in the paper, or they hear you, it's like they stop you, and and then you conduct yourself in a very professional way. You answer questions. You give them, information that can be shared. But again, it's just sort of that, that idea that, you have a professional life, but you also have to have an awareness that it's also you have to be professional and personal. You have lead by example. Now, leaders are always consistent in their actions and decisions. So, there are exceptions where sometimes maybe a leader has made a decision based on information that was provided to the leader. But that information, there's new information that's come up. Something has changed. Now, leaders are allowed to change their decision because saying that because they've made a decision, they cannot change it. But be cautious because that is important. Like, how often that happens and the frequency of that. So you want to make sure you do your due diligence in the upfront. Your staff's providing you with all of the information that you are going to need, so that you do have to change. However, that decision, but again, you do the right things for the right reasons. And if there's a compounding reason that you have to, you come through, you're very transparent. You explain why that change. You give the rationale for that change. But again, it's just trying to ensure that there's consistency along the way so that people don't generally like surprises, unless it's maybe their birthday. But I have found that most people are not fond of surprises. They like to make sure that they have everything out there, that there's nothing they know. So now, if we look about that, that's all about trust, and with trust it comes the integrity part. So when people say to you, I think that there's something that we need to do, then that we have to do it. So I'm just going to
Just click postpone.
You can do it for more than 10
Here we
minutes.
go. All right. Yes.
You're all
Thank
set.
you. And I wanted to say that trust and integrity part is essential to any good leadership style. And it's the same way with the political leaders. We have the mayor as well. It's all about you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And that's really what it's about. The next opportunity here is really about embracing change. As we know, change management is huge today. It's more than it's ever been. And certainly in the last 5 years of my entire work career, I would say it had more change than it had previously, based on everything from technology, of course, right through to legislation. There was a lot more. There's issues like the global warming, climate change, that, there's all these types of new initiatives that are coming forward that where, the public's certainly very responsive to. And so we want to make sure that we adapt to that change. We're aware of what's happening out there. We can't proceed in being an effective leader in any organization unless we get that sort of feedback from the ground up and seek opportunities. So I'll use a quick example of that. When one of my positions, there was a major corporate reorganization going on. And it was just after I started with the municipality, and I made the point of saying once to my boss, I like to be challenged. I like challenges. So, well, guess what? I got one. So this was one where there was a restructuring done, quite a significant one, where I took 2 other units from 2 other departments and assimilated them into my department. So you had basically 3 entities now. Make it work. And so you have to then, as a leader, sit down and say, okay, we have to work as a team. How do we get this team to work? So what I did, and it's obviously very time consuming, but, sitting down with individuals and asking them privately, and my open door policy, I close the door and I say, what's working and what's not? Tell me what's not working and what is working. And so I found that was probably one of the most useful exercises, because I got very honest, open feedback. And sometimes you don't get that when you're in a meeting room with a whole bunch of other people in there. They're not always maybe relaxed about saying things. They don't want to offend a colleague, or they don't want to offend a boss, or they don't, they feel a little cautious. So again, take that as an opportunity. There was an opportunity there. And, at the end of the day, what came out of that was amazing. We had fabulous input. We implemented a number of things that I was able to strategically through budget get to where they needed to be. And within a time frame of, it took a couple years to get that, but it was extremely important that had I not had that time individually, I'm not sure that would have been a successful transition as it was. So the thing that I wanted to ask you though is, a lot of times when I would interview candidates for positions of leadership, it wasn't always clear that they had personal goals or career goals. Be clear what those are. When I say personal, but your career goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And that's a question I always ask in performance reviews as well as my staff. And of course, they would always know that, so they always come ready. But also asking, what's the development plan? What kind of, how do you want to add value to an organization that you're in, or that you would like to be in? And so you have to do a little bit of homework on that. And then you have to be able to say, okay, what skills though do I have? Because, we all have transferable skills. We don't always realize that. And sometimes, people sell themselves short with not realizing that they have those transferable skills. So think closely about that, because a lot of times I've done a fair amount of mentoring through my career. And what I found to be with the mentees is that they have those skills, they have those abilities, but they sell themselves short. They just don't quite think that they have their, quite. No. You will find with your attitude that you'll get yourself to where you need to be. So just be confident about that. Your attitude determines your success. So again, be confident when you're dealing in a leadership role. Be positive. We're all here to do a job. We all want to make a difference in our community. So we all want to leave a legacy as employees in the public service. The biggest thing that my colleagues and I really value in our roles as leaders has been, and will continue to be, relationship building. And it's collaboration, and how to bridge that divide where there's differences, where there's problems, and there's challenges with relationships. And I probably had more of that relationship building to do when I was the chief billing official, because again, you're dealing with a number of other sectors that are outside of the organization that are special, have special, whether it's the real estate, it could be the builders, it can be the developers, it can be any number of entities. So, excuse me. So you really have to bridge, find a way to bridge. And for me, as a leader, that was face-to-face. That was picking up the phone when they called, responding right away to their calls, to their emails. It was about getting together with them and basically touching base as to what's working, what's not. What can we do to improve the processes? What can we do to make this service better? And that is really what's important. It's about, we would have differences of opinion, but we would at least understand where each side was coming from. And we would also say, for example, I would have to authorize issuance of stock work orders. There would be, or issues where we wouldn't be able to issue permits. We would bring in the customer. We would sit them down face to face and say, we want to be able to help you. Here's a plan we can give you. Here's a list of items. If you can check these off, we can try and do something to speed up the process for you. But we need your help with this. So again, it's about relationship building. Barriers. if you think yourself as a leader, you have barriers. You just have to realize about the importance of stretching yourself. Taking risks is something that all leaders do, and they have to. If they didn't take risks, they wouldn't be where they are today. So my risk was having been, as Martin said, I mean, my undergrad was in urban regional planning. I was a planner through my career. I was municipal clerk for some time. I did take a little hiatus out of municipal government. I taught. I went and taught geography in high school, and just took a little break from the municipal government sector. Then I came back to the municipal government sector, and those transferring of skills were essential to my success because, for example, in teaching, the pedagogy of learning styles, I today still use that. There's a lot of good information, a lot of transfer of information that you can use. So you have to stretch yourself. And then when I came back into, I've been at the city, the county level, a small municipal township level. You stretch yourself, you move around, you say, okay, I like to be challenged. This is where I'm going to go. I'm going to do what I can to make a difference. And that's what a leader does. They go and they make a difference. And sometimes they can be there for their whole career. Sometimes it can be, 5 or 6 years, it can be whatever. And sometimes you'll see with leaders changing as mayors change. Sometimes that correlation happens too. It just depends, again, on the situation. So stretch yourself and realize that when I never thought in a million years in my career path that I would be a chief building official. But the opportunity came, the previous CBO had taken another position. I was asked to step up to the plate and be an acting CBO. So I thought, sure, why not? I'll do it for, probably 6 months they do the recruitment. Well, it was a year later, and I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and guess what? I got the job. So there is, again, an example that you stretch yourself. I had to go back. I had to get some training. I had to do extra to do that. But I wanted to invest the time. I was willing to invest that time in doing it. So my messaging there is don't be afraid to stretch yourself. Change is constant. Seize the opportunity and educate yourself in learning and what you're doing now, especially those that are watching as well. Part-time, doing your MPA part-time, working full-time. I know what that felt like. I don't know, 3.5 years being on a treadmill like that. When you get off, you think, how the heck did we do that? But that investment of time is going to be the best investment you'll make in your entire career. And that learning doesn't stop. Once you finish your MPA, you're always going to be continuously going to learning opportunities, whether it be workshops, seminars, conferences. Politicians do it as well. We all end, again, even as a leader, I made sure that whenever there were elections, we would bring in the new counselors, we'd sit them down, we would staff the management team, we would go through and give them an overview of what we did and where we were going so they could understand. We would ask them, okay, what questions do you have of us? Where do you see it? Where do you have issues or where do you have concerns? So it's that two-way stream of education that's so important in keeping current. So the first thing you want to think about is making sure you have a mentor or a coach, because you do need, it's very helpful to have somebody that you can trust and confide in, because there will be times as a leader you need a second opinion. Seek out those opportunities, expand your network, like I was saying earlier, with the conferences, the workshops, all those things, but always committing to lifelong learning. And that's so great now with technology that we can do that, just go online and do that. But the one thing before I finish, wanted to share with you is the model that I've been using as a leader, and that goes back since 1999 when I was the Athena Award recipient. I've gone through and researched a number of leadership models, and this is the one that I keep going back to. I provided you with the link to it. I was actually in Grand Rapids, Michigan last week, attending the Athena conference. It's the 35th anniversary. So there was a small delegation of us from Canada there. There are 8 tentacles to this model, and to me, this lays it out pretty clearly as far as leadership tools for your toolbox. Live authentically. So in other words, you know your values, be true to them. Do the right things for the right reasons. learning constantly, always, as I said, you don't stop learning. So, and helping yourself to understand and others as well. Those relationships, like we said, you know, to develop that trust, that will give you empowerment as a leader. You'll be able to engage people more effectively. The collaboration, it's all about that relationship building. Again, it's about making people feel that they're valued and that what they say has value and that they're important. And that's what the one story I always have with the janitor. The one municipality I left early in my career, I ran into an employee there about a decade later. She said, I always remember you because you always spoke to me. I was a janitor, you're the one that ever spoke to me. And I just thought, okay, that's, I mean, everybody has something. You bring something to the organization. Advocate fiercely. When you believe in something strongly, you fight for what's right. You educate. You do what you need to do to educate others. And don't be afraid. Again, acting courageously. You have the wherewithal. You can do what you need to do to get the job done. You have a team that's here to back up and support you. The one thing about leaders is they always give back. Leaders always in the community, whether within the organization, you know, signing up, volunteering for all kinds of committees. When you look at my bio, there's pages of committees that you'll have tons of opportunities to get involved in if you're a leader that wants to give back, and the same in the community. And finally is celebrating. Too often we find that employees don't always get the recognition, even politicians. You know, we want to be able to, as leaders, remember and rejoice, both in the happy and the sad times. But it's important, even something simple as I would do, you know, like after their anniversaries, like 5 years, 10 years, we would do certain, you know, have a little event in the office. We would do different things through the year to try and promote that and celebrate. So keep in mind that it's really a, you know, this leadership model really is to me a good toolbox, something that you'll have to use in any organization that you end up working with or that you're currently working within. So I hope that this has been helpful to you, useful to you. And if you have any questions, I don't know if there's any coming through the Twitter, but if we have any in the room, I'd be most happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Leanne. So, well, you've put a lot of things on the table and a lot of great insights. So I have a few things I'd like to ask you, but I want to see if other people want to ask questions first.
Good question.
I'll get your name too, please.
Jennifer,
that's right.
So my question is, as I'm currently doing the Master's in Public Administration and hoping to enter the career force in the next year or so, what would be kind of like your suggestions or your tips for somebody who's interested in kind of like, I guess like a management trajectory, but kind of, I guess like letting people know, letting your manager know that like that is where you'd like to be headed into those kind of leadership positions? How do you like effectively position yourself to get there?
That's a very good question, Jennifer. And actually, I'll just made me think back to a story. There was a coaching program that was initiated in one of the municipalities I worked at, and I was one of the fortunate first 13 of the class. And so the career coach said to us, what you need to do is, you know, we talked about that 5-year plan. You need to communicate that to your supervisor. You need to let people know that that's where you want to be. Okay, so the other advice that career coach had given us was to select 2 people within the organization that we respected as leaders, and to arrange a meeting with them, 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops, and just have that conversation with them. Exactly, let them know. Because otherwise, out of sight, out of mind. They don't, you know, they'll observe it's, you know, but they won't really connect the dots in all cases because, you know, they don't know, they haven't drilled down to that detail. So that would be my advice as you enter the workforce, is to make it clear to your supervisor and to 1 or 2 leaders within the organization, because opportunities do come up. They crop up unexpectedly, not always planned. So being at the right place at the right time is good.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Ponswani. I'm also doing the MPA, and so my question is kind of similar to Jen's, but maybe more specific to interviewing. You were talking about just like being like just expressing your skills properly and stuff, because they're like sometimes like young people like us like that haven't had like so much experience might not know how to like express what we bring to the workforce. So do you have any suggestions about really like being able to express your skills in an interview, or use like what you have and show how it is effective in the workplace? Or
your question is timely. I have a nephew that just graduated from university, and he was being interviewed for his first round of interviews and asked me the very same question. And I've had others that I've mentored through other areas. And what I suggest, and it's been really effective, is come up with at least 3 to 5 examples of stories that reinforce a skill that you feel you have, and have a story that substantiates that skill. So it's really important when and I've conducted tons of interviews through my career, but the one thing that always stands out, people can rhyme off a list and read their resume and say, but it's the stories that you remember. It's the examples that you remember. So that would be my advice. And when you go to an interview, it's like that elevator speech, but it has, a story that goes with it. And you can reinforce it, and you can use the same story 2 or 3 times in the interview. That's fine. But the examples are what resonates with the interviewers. It's good questions. Yes.
Okay, I'll jump in with one, unless we got somebody asking something.
I do. We can do that.
Virtually? Okay, all right. So one of my questions is, you may or may not know Dave Seagulls' recent book. He published a book about 2 years ago about CAOs, and it was about leadership at CAOs. And he said one of the challenges of being a public sector leader as opposed to being a leader in a private sector organization is that in your private sector organization, you really mostly have a relationship with your subordinates as a leader, right? And you rally them and you bring them together, and you provide a vision and support for direction. And the public sector, he said, you have to lead down towards your subordinates, but also up to council and also out to the community, right? So you're leading in multiple directions at the same time, and those different directions, people might have very different understandings, priorities. So I was wondering, either in your experience, do you see that as a particular challenge? And is it one that goes beyond, he was talking about CAOs, so does it go beyond CAOs?
It definitely does go. It's an excellent question, Martin. It goes well beyond CEOs, because when you're on the ground, both the executive directors, leaders, the managers, supervisors, and in basically your support staff. What happens with that is he's very right about that. And I remember when that book came out, and looking at some of the research on that, it is very different, because we have a very different environment as leaders in the public sector, because we are not just, as you say, we're not just dealing with the supports. It's dealing with the public. It's dealing with the politicians. Those are the added ons that make it more challenging for public service leaders. So when you look at the types of traits and leadership competencies, those remain the same. But what seems to be different about public leadership is we do a lot more in terms of reaching out and doing a lot more relationship building with everyone else, be it the politicians, be it with the public, the stakeholder groups, but we do spend a lot more time collaborating and building relationships than with politicians, with everyone, including the other like provincial and federal entities that we deal with. And I use the example of the flood that just happened. So there's all those entities working together, and it's working quite well, and everybody's communicating well. It just, when push comes to shove, it works, but it's because there's relationships that have been built up over time. There's trust within those too, and they're founded on trust, and it's making sure that with the public too, that they understand, and making sure that the information is out there for the public. So again, Make sure your websites are updated. Make sure you have all the information there readily available to people to help them understand, both the politicians. We would do regular sessions, update sessions with politicians if we found that there was major changes happening. Just so again that people are, and we'd reach out to the public and get their input before making major policy decisions. So it's embracing that. It's time consuming, much more time consuming in the private sector, that's for sure. Because we don't have a choice in our customers. They are who they are.
So Neil is from the class of 2015. She's watching from Calgary, and she wanted me to ask the following question. How do you develop a vision for your career in 5 to 10 year plans, but remain flexible to allow for those unexpected opportunities to arise?
Yeah, so, and greetings to you out there in Calgary. I do want to say that it's flexible in the sense that you have a basic 5-year plan. For example, saying, you know, you want to be a CEO in 5 years. Now, there may be some other opportunities that come your way that you don't expect, and you may digress from that and take up those opportunities. But keep in mind that there's nothing wrong with that, because you're taking your skills are very transferable. So you can take those skills and move them in the same direction. You can carry those with you. So not to be, you know, concerned about that. You do have a 5-year plan. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Those opportunities may not be there, but you can take what skills you do have and what experience you have and work towards that goal. It is very transferable. I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short. We don't and don't promote ourselves enough to understand that those are very valuable. So it's being open and again taking risks, and it will come. It's all about timing. Yes, I didn't get you.
Yeah, so kind of a follow-up question, I guess, to Martin's. So you mentioned that, you know, even below the role of the CAO, people are leading in all 3 directions. So I'm just wondering, in your experience, kind of, which was the most difficult direction to lead in? Kind of up, down, or out? Where were the kind of the biggest challenges?
That is, there are very various scenarios where that can change. For the most part, what I found was that when you really didn't have issues that changed a lot if you communicated the vision clearly, and you basically monitored the progress on a regular basis as to, for example, always putting together business performance plans and time frames and accountability items. So you had basically that you charted that course like I was referring to before. But if everybody on board understands where you're going, they know that vision, usually there wasn't a problem. It was only when that there wasn't a vision. And that's when I experienced that, when there was a phase of restructurings going on. Like there had been like something like 4 different CEOs in 4 years in one of the municipalities. So that was challenging because none of us really knew what the course was that we were heading on. We didn't know where we were heading. That direction wasn't there. So that's kind of an example of where it breaks down. And it can be at the political level, it can be at the CEO level, or it can be, but it was pretty much right across the board in those cases, because there really wasn't any sort of formalized plan. It was kind of day to day. So that's why, you know, having those mission statements and strategic plans in place really will offset and mitigate issues like you're referring to.
I'm just going to follow up on that and say, I mean, it seems to me that likely the challenges of leading in different directions are somewhat different as well, though systematically. I don't know if that's your experience, but, you know, politicians often face pressures, both electoral and directly from the public, to, you know, have, the pressures are often for fairly short-term ideas of what to do, right? Although really good politicians will sort of push against that a little bit. Your staff, on the other hand, they often want, regularity and predictability, right? So that they can make the most of their limited resources over a longer period of time. And so I wonder if those leading in those different directions pulls in different directions sometimes.
Okay, so the question is about regularity, and you're dealing with different levels, be it politicians and what have you, staff. It's really it's kind of a tough question. It is. It really does depend on the issue, and I found that dealing with politicians, I found what worked best for me as a leader was not to, like, if I saw that there were issues cropping up, I would give them a heads up. I would advise them. I would make sure that they weren't caught off guard, that they weren't surprised.
Right.
That helped to alleviate some of the issues because then they had an awareness and they had some background information. They knew the rationale for why staff made the decision they made and how we came about making that decision. So that education really helped a lot, I found.
Yeah.
And they were most appreciative of that, getting that heads up so they didn't get surprised or caught off guard.
Yeah.
That to me was the most. And the other thing too was dealing with the media, like being responsive to media. Whenever I trained my managers, I'd say, like, drop whatever else when the media calls, because again, that's an opportunity to educate the public. It's educating, everyone in the community. So,
and that's very interesting because my not direct experience, but interacting a lot with municipal administrators, my sense is that many municipal administrators kind of run from the media. They don't want to go there. Not so you're saying get out in front there with your information.
You're saying that the experience has been a lot of times municipal administrators back away, they're shy making that contact, returning those calls, and so there are that does happen. I do know that for me it was a priority, and it really formed a really good relationship, and so that when we had opportunities and we had to get information out to the media, they were very receptive, and if ever there was an error or something that maybe got misinterpreted, there was a respectful, relationship there.
So I think we're pretty much out of time. We started a little late, so if there's one final question or comment from somebody, we can take one more.
I'll maybe ask one.
I'm sorry, your name again is?
It's Joe.
Joe.
Yeah. And so I guess, in this program, especially for the full-time students, we're kind of training generalists. In that, they don't have a specific skill set, right? We're not training planners, we're not training engineers. And so for people like that, kind of in relation to the opportunities that are going to be hopefully appearing, over the next few years as senior people retire in municipal governments, what's a good way for them to sort of approach their entry into the job market when, a lot of the positions that are advertised are kind of more specialized positions. So how, there's kind of a disconnect there between a need for kind of generalist municipal leaders at the higher levels, but then all of the entry level positions are very specialized. So how does that overcome, and how do kind of, recent MPA grads entering the job market, how do they sort of pitch themselves appropriately?
Okay, so Joe, the question is, you've got entry-level graduates that are trying to get into, they have general backgrounds, but many of the jobs are very specific, technically orientated, but very specific. So trying to get a job entry when it's a general sort of background, and not, you use the example of, engineer planner that have those like very specialized versus the general. The experience that I've had in the municipalities that I've worked is that the generalists, the grads, normally will enter into the administrative type of departments. So where you have like the clerk's departments, and you have the CO's departments, and you have the say social services. They have some administrative needs, strategic needs, and you'll find that when you start drilling down into departments, they do have generalists that are doing a lot of their policy work, a lot of their policy research and development. And they are in need of that type of resource. So the research skills that you have are very valuable to to any organization, to any department, but not all departments may have a set research or, you know, that general classification, but many do. And so don't underestimate those opportunities, because they can be right across the board. They can be anywhere from CO's office, clerk's office, through to even in some cases Parks and Recreation. Sometimes it just depends on the size of the organization. And but yes, there's generalist needs out there, and especially assistance too with, like I said, the research, the report writing, presentations, even mayor's office. Oftentimes they hire generalists too. So there's having that awareness that it's out there, and that's why I think it's again important to stay connected with the networks that are out there too within this organization, as certainly with the alumni association. Staying involved in that and making those connections are extremely important.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for those watching online. Thanks for those who came today. And special thanks, of course, to Leanne. Thank you very much for a really interesting presentation. And I think we had a good discussion at the end. So I want to let you know that we will be having another local governance seminar in late November. I'll let you know all of the details. Zach Taylor is going to be talking about some of his recent work. And so that should be pretty interesting for everybody. So we'll keep you posted about all the details. So thanks again.
My pleasure.